Hello and thank you for choosing Speed Hut. Today we're going to be showing a full gauge assembly. This will be applicable to both the Legacy Series and the Revolution Series gauges. This is an example of a Revolution Series volt gauge. You can tell by the warning light that will be right here that it's a Revolution Series. So first, and everything that we have is set out in the order of which it's going to be installed in. So if you wanted to follow along with us, then you could have everything laid out, just like we do, and then just follow along. So we're gonna first start off with our circuit board, where this is the front and this is the back. So the back's gonna be noted by the connector that's on there. Depending on the gauge that you have, it's gonna have either 1 to 3 connectors. This one is just a voltmeter, so it's just reading off of the voltage in, so it's not gonna need any other connectors. We're gonna take our grommet and we're going to flip that around so that way our connector lines up with that, and then it'll just be pressed on. You want to make sure that it's sitting flush. There's going to be an indentation on the board and on the grommet itself. Those are going to line up in the case, but we want to make sure that these are lined up with each other and that everything's sitting flat. And then I will note that soon we're going to be installing these light bars or light posts that just isolate the light from either the warning light or the pointer lights. So, and this one does have an orientation where so there's going to be a larger pin and a smaller pin, and those are just going to be fit onto the board right here. So it's just going to be installed like this. So once it's installed in the case, then it's going to look like this is the end result. And then the cover for the light's gonna go just right inside there, and then it's gonna fit right into that little notch there. That is for just a tiny bit later though. So first we wanna grab our case, make sure it's orientated to our connector so you can see the connector spaced on the case. It's gonna line up with our connector on there, and then that groove that I mentioned earlier is gonna line up with this notch on the board or on the case. So then we're gonna place that in there, and all right, so that's kind of misaligned. So I usually pick it up by the motor, post, and just try and spin it around just a little bit with my finger, and that should get placed down there correctly. Okay. There you go. So you should feel it, sit flush against the bottom. I know right there it was feeling a little off to me, so just apply a little bit more pressure and get that to fit into place. So you should see that this line is if there's a button, then it will be lined up next to the larger notch, and then each side will have a little notch that it fits onto the board. So that's looking good. Then next we're going to be installing this middle ring. So there are going to be a couple indentations on there, but the one we're looking for is this one, which is going to line up with that notch that I had mentioned earlier, the larger one. So that is going to go on through there, and that's on there pretty perfect, where you will be able to tell if it's installed incorrectly, where it won't sit flat like it is doing right now. So then after that's installed, then we can start to move on to these. So like I said again, it has a larger notch and a smaller notch, and those are going to fit into those holes in the board. It will be a little bit trickier to get those in there, but it is possible. Might take a little bit of trial and error. Alright, that's fit in there. I press down just to make sure that that's fit in there snug. Then I can put this warning light cap on there as well, and again making sure that it lines up with that little notch. Everything's pressed in there pretty well. And then there's the light tube for the pointers, which is going to have 2 little notches, but they aren't size orientated, so they're just going to go into these holes on the board. All right, so that's sitting in as flat as possible, and since it's not like pressure fit in there, then I would keep the gauge as flat as possible to make sure that installation goes well. I'll flip it around so that way when we go to install our dial, it'll be orientated correctly. And before installing the dial, I do want to make sure to clean that off first, just to make sure that there's no dust or debris on there. And then there's going to be a notch at the top and bottom of the dial, so that's going to fit in to the notch at the bottom there, you can see, and then it'll fit over the top, the warning light, and the pointer tube. So make sure that those are all correct, and then this should be sitting flush. So after that's installed, then we can take the top ring. There is an orientation to this where there's a small lip at the top, which is going to be installed up, just so that way the gasket, when we install it, can make a, as tight of a seal as possible. But there is no indentation or anything like that, so that way you don't have to worry about having it spun a certain way. So then after that's installed, or before we install the gasket, we're going to install the pointer. So that's going to be, you're going to want to fit this tube over the center of the motor, and that you can press down until it stops. And then so over here you can see that the pointer stops at just about 9.5. That's the resistance where the 0 is going to be. So you're going to want to twist it counterclockwise against that resistance to line it up at the bottom of scale. And then, all right, that's pretty good, but I can do it a little bit better. So you can just spin it all the way back around, and then just line it back up. And that's looking pretty good to me. All right, so once that's installed, you can install the button extension. It'll fit right over the button on the board, and you can do a quick test button press. And then next we're going to be installing the gasket. So there is an orientation to this as well, where there's a small lip on this side, and then this side is going to be flat. So the flat side is where we're going to want to be installing up, so that way the gasket makes as good a seal as possible. And then just want to work it around the edge, make sure that's sitting as flat as possible. This could take a little bit of trial and error, just so it's being set in there perfect. All right, that's looking pretty good. Next, we're going to want to take our window, clean that, and if there is dust or anything like that, you can blow it out. But right now it's looking pretty good to me. So next we're going to fit on our window. So this grommet is already installed for our Revolution series, but if you don't have a Revolution series, then you can make sure to match up the top and bottom just to make sure that those are orientated correctly into the appropriate placements. Alright, so then I would fit the button first, and then make sure that these two are in their appropriate spots. That should look like that, and that should look like that, and then do, alright, so that, alright, yep, the button is correct. You can see it's not sideways or anything like that, it's still pressing. And then, alright, keeping it again flat as possible, we can put the bezel on. And before locking it in place, I recommend to do one final check just to make sure that everything is looking clean on the inside. And then we can also apply power to the gauge. So just, in this case it's a voltmeter, so it only has power, but plug it in, it goes full sweep, comes back, and I'll unplug that. So with that test is just making sure that the zeros are lined up correctly. So we wanted to make sure when it does that full sweep, it starts at the bottom of scale, then goes to the max, and comes back. I know in this case it's a voltmeter, so if you leave it plugged in, which is fine, it'll just go to whatever voltage it's reading. Other than that, then you're good to close it up. So you'll turn it clockwise, and you'll hear a small click. That shows you that it's locked into place. And then you can double check that by checking these tabs on the side. Make sure that those are locked in place, and then everything is good to go and you're ready to start reading. All right, thank you.